Fine, CNN's Anderson Cooper. Anderson?
Yeah, hey Miles, this may be the easy side of the storm, but it does not feel very easy right here on the banks of the Mississippi River. I just want to show you, a little bit earlier we showed you a crane that was on a barge, and we were a little bit concerned about what might happen to it. I want to show you what has happened to it, and this is the kind of thing that can cause real problems. This crane is now flying loose. It was pointed completely in the other direction about half an hour ago. It has now been untethered, and this crane with a ball is just flopping around. And if these winds pick up much more, this could cause some serious damage to these lights over here and to this bridge. It is obviously a pretty big concern, and if you pan down, you can see, I mean, that thing is just loose. There is no control over that right now. We're going to back away a little bit because I'm concerned about this thing. It's just flying around. The winds have really picked up here significantly over the last half hour or so. It feels to me that this may be, for us, the worst part of the storm, or at least over the next hour, this may be the worst for us. The wind is I don't have a wind meter, so I can't tell how strong it is, but it is blowing the rain just completely horizontally. You cannot even look in a northward direction. Visibility is down. It's hard to even tell. It's maybe 100 feet visibility for us here, and there are whitecaps, significant whitecaps on the Mississippi River that are just blowing into that barge and have actually knocked this, wow, and I'm sorry, that have knocked this barge into the bridge that we are standing on, and I don't know if the barge is floating loose or not. But it is, well, let me look over here. Yeah, the barge, it has completely it's just knocking into the bridge down here. The bridge is pretty secure, so I'm not too concerned about the bridge itself, but it's very possible that barge could become completely untethered. The other object of concern, that's the bridge, the I-10 bridge over here as we move across. Watch out for this. There was some traffic, if you can believe it, some semis crossing over that bridge in the last 20 minutes or so. In fact, you can see a car right now trying to cross over that bridge. That is certainly not a good idea. At this point, no cars should be on the road. Police have been saying that now for several hours. There are just a few people who are not paying attention to that. You can really see the water has, actually, if you can come over here, let me show you. There's a buoy that has blown ashore on the Mississippi. We're on the east side of the Mississippi River. That buoy blew ashore. It must have been just in the last half hour or so, because we have not. I have not seen that until now. And then if you pan up, that's the USS Kidd, which is a naval. It's a memorial for the Navy. It is in dry dock, as you can see, but the water is actually starting to come up underneath that ship. We were not expecting huge amounts of storm surge here. We had heard of 28 feet storm surge in New Orleans. Chad Myers had been telling us a little bit a while ago that we probably will not be seeing anywhere near that kind of storm surge here. The real concern is the wind and the rain and any flooding that may cause. And we are seeing significant wind and significant rain at this point. And you know, again, this is supposed to be the easy side of the storm. But as I said earlier, Miles, it does not feel very easy at all. I'm going to toss it back to you, Miles.
All right, Anderson, so much for easy. I guess that's a very relative term. I should point out, you know, I'm only a couple of miles, if that, from where Anderson stands. It just goes to show you how capricious these things can be. I'm protected. You can't see it, but on the other side, there's a big building there, and beyond it is the LSU Tigers Stadium, which is a big barrier. And then there's this shaft. I'm getting kind of a wind tunnel effect down here as this goes north to south. But it's not nearly the kind of effect that he's feeling there. I think we're somewhat more protected here. This is a campus of in excess of 30,000 students, and they're getting a few days off. The man who called those days off is Sean O'Keefe, who is the chancellor of the university, and if that name sounds familiar to you, it is the same Sean O'Keefe who was the NASA administrator until not too long ago. Sean, step in a little closer for us. First of all, tell us, is the school secure, ready? Are kids where they should be, as best you can tell?
Absolutely, and we've had a couple days worth of preparation time, and the emergency services response from all the units here around the state, the local community, and certainly here on campus have responded just beautifully. So we're about as battened down as you could hope for.
You didn't evacuate the campus. That was not, as a matter of fact, there are no mandatory evacuations I know of in Baton Rouge. Why not?
Well, this is an area where all the evacuation coming from New Orleans passes right to the through the city, as well as going west towards Lafayette and Houston. And so you've got a lot of traffic moving through. This is one of the central sites for special needs evacuation points for the state here on campus, as well as this is one of the more secure places for a lot of students living on campus to just kind of ride out the storm.
Well, and I guess that's what we're seeing. We see some people. There's some kids right there that are, kind of getting a little taste of Katrina. Nothing too dangerous out here. Yeah, lifelong memory. I mean, and if in an hour or so, it may not be a wise idea to step outside. Have the police force here? Have they had any problems this morning? Any power outages, that kind of thing?
There was a power outage earlier this morning, but in talking to the facility services folks here just about an hour or so ago, as well as the LSU Police Department chief, everything's been really about as well controlled as we could hope for, and the damage has been predicted, but at the same time, nothing that's unmanageable.
All right, this seems to be the place to be. Baton Rouge is, as they say, the easy side. That remains to be seen whether easy side is apt, as Chad Myers called it. Sean O'Keefe, the chancellor
Nice to see you
again,
Louisiana. Was under better circumstances.
Well, yeah, me too. Chancellor of Louisiana State University, Sean O'Keefe. Thanks very much. Let's go back to the Big Easy. From the easy side of the storm, we'll put that in quotes, to the Big Easy, we find CNN's John Zarella. He is very near the French Quarter, and we hope in a safe place in the hotel right now, because that is a place where clearly it would be very susceptible to some flooding, as these levees, as they say, might get topped over in an hour or so, depending on how the storm goes. John, what are you seeing there?
Miles, what we are seeing looking out this 10th floor window here in the French Quarter area is that swirling wind just continuing to just circulate in all directions, coming off of a dome next to us. It's just that white out now, that absolute sheet of white pounding off the building, slamming against the sides of the building, rain pouring off the sides of the buildings for the last couple of hours now. We heard a report from Mayor Nagin on local radio here saying that in the hotel that he is in, that they have lost some windows in that hotel. We don't believe we have lost any windows in this hotel yet. He also was saying, the mayor, that there is a report that the levee in one particular spot, and I'm not clear where it was, may have been overtopped, and that the pump station in that particular area is now out of commission. So again, here in the Big Easy, it is not that easy this morning, and we are beginning to see some of the worst of what Katrina has to offer and to dish out here. Again, the storm perhaps a little bit to the right of us. We should be very close to that left western eye wall, and still just a tremendous pounding that we're taking here. So again, Miles, reports from the mayor at least that windows blown out in the hotel that he is at, and that at least one pump station down, and perhaps the levee breached or overtopped in one particular spot. Not sure whether that's on the North Shore by Lake Pontchartrain or in another location. Miles?
All right, John Zarella, we appreciate that report. Please stay safe where you are. We're getting some sketchy reports right now. And you recall, the main evacuation center in New Orleans is the Superdome, home of the Saints normally. Apparently the Superdome is leaking, has sprung a leak. Don't know how extensive it is. We're going to try to raise our reporter from our affiliate WDSU, Ed Reams, who's inside the Superdome. That after a break. Stay with us.
Welcome back to our coverage of Hurricane Katrina. Let's get right to Ed Reams, who's an affiliate reporter, and he's got word on the Superdome leaking. That, of course, is where an estimated 10,000 people have camped out as they wait for the hurricane to pass. Let's get right to Ed. Ed, good morning.
Good morning, Soledad. As you may be able to hear as I'm talking to you in the background, if you hear these sounds like banging, something banging against some metal, that is actually pieces of the roof. The roof here at the Louisiana Superdome in New Orleans, about to possibly peel off the top. We've been dealing with this for the past 20 minutes. We've first started hearing a lot of banging on the top of the roof. Then what was supposed to be a waterproof roof started raining inside part of the Superdome. And now as we're looking up, I'm looking up right now, and I'm seeing parts of daylight now through the top of the Superdome. It keeps getting larger and larger. So it looks like one section of the Superdome roof may soon peel away from the actual stadium.
Let me interrupt you there. Can I interrupt you there? Let me ask you a couple of questions. How big is this section of the roof that looks like it's beginning to peel off the Superdome?
I would say it was probably 1/12. If you look at it as the circumference of a circle and you divide it into pies, and you look and divide it into 12 pieces and took one of those 12 pieces, that would probably be about the size of what we're looking at right now.
Wow. Well, when you consider how many tens of thousands of people can sit inside the Superdome, that is a very large chunk of that roof, by your estimation, that's about to come off, or looks like it could peel away a little bit. Now, take me back to the problems with the waterproofing, or I should say lack of waterproofing. People inside, when did they realize there was a problem? Did it just start to pour on the inside, or was it sort of just drips and drabs and leaks?
It started as just a little sprinkle, and then gradually started turning into more like a afternoon summer storm, and then it started pouring more like a faucet coming out in one section. Folks noticed, they started feeling drops, and then started hearing all the noise, and have moved over to the other side of the Superdome, just trying to get away. Should this part of the roof fall or peel away, part of it may fall down onto the floor. That's why they're trying to move out of the way to avoid that.
Okay, a couple more questions for you. One, can you tell what authorities are trying to do right now? I mean, in the storm, I can't even imagine that they could even think about getting out there to try to secure it in any way.
Yes, Soledad, I don't know if you can hear in the background is that banging. Authorities are right now moving people over to the other side of the dome and scrambling to try to see how they can address this problem. Oh, now we can see daylight, Soledad. I can see daylight out of the roof of the Superdome, straight up out of the roof. Rain, wind is now starting to pour into the roof of the Superdome. This is only going to probably get bigger because we have another 2 hours before even the worst part of the storm hits our area.
Ed, I got to tell you, we cannot really hear the banging behind you. I know you've asked me a couple of times if I can hear it, and I cannot. Okay. Give me a sense of how the people are reacting inside. If this piece has now peeled off, as you're describing, are people starting to panic? As you point out, you got 2 hours to go, minimum.
Right. I think they are concerned. A lot of people are getting underneath the terrace level, which is a concrete reinforced structure, which is underneath another set of bleachers. They're moving away from the open area of the Superdome and also over to the other side of the Superdome where there appears to be no damage. And everyone's just kind of looking up in awe that this is the supposedly the safest place in New Orleans, and this Superdome is succumbing to this superstorm.
Do they seem to be panicking? Is everybody calm? And do authorities seem to be in control? Do they have the crowd control? I mean, you got 10,000 people with all their belongings trying to move from one part of the Superdome to another.
Yes, I would not describe it as panic. I would describe it as concern. They've been here all throughout the night, getting to know their neighbors. I think they are looking out for each other, moving everybody and their items over to the other side of the dome. I haven't heard any screams or any shouts of horror at this particular time. There's obvious concern because these folks will have to ride out this storm. There's nowhere for these folks to go. This is where they're going to have to be, whether the roof comes off of this dome or not. The winds outside and the rain are just so treacherous right now, there's simply nowhere else to go. So I think they're trying to salvage or do the best in a bad situation by staying calm and moving to a safer location within the stadium dome.
Well, there's no place to go, and even if there were another place to go, too late now. The storm's coming, and it has made landfall, and as you point out, it won't be long before it hits, and everybody's feeling it. Well, we'll see. We're going to check back in with you, Ed, and see what authorities are able to do as far as fixing what Ed Reams, an affiliate reporter at WDSU, describes as a large 1/12 the size of the ceiling of the Superdome peeling away. He says he can see a massive slice of daylight coming back down, and of course with that daylight also lots of rain because we've got some high winds in that area as well. That of course is where some 10,000 people are camped out. They'd gone there in the hopes of finding a very secure and safe location. They're being fed, being sheltered, don't really have any place else to go, and right now it seems as if they are having some big problems at the Superdome. We'll continue to monitor that side of the story as well. Let's get back to Miles O'Brien in Baton Rouge this morning. Miles, you've been listening to what's going on there.
Wow.
You know, when you consider, Miles, that they really thought that would be the safe place to put everybody, I can't even imagine what the plan is if they got to get 10,000 people out of the Superdome.
I doubt there is a really safe plan. You know, I think what Ed was just saying about people trying to get under that structure is probably the best short-term plan. But let's do some math here. Chad, I want to bring you in, Chad. The eye is 35 miles south-southeast of New Orleans, correct?
Just about 35 to 40, correct.
All right. And it's moving still, what, 12 to 15 miles an hour, is that correct?
15 miles to the north. You're right on it.
Okay. All right. So we're talking about at least 2.5 hours before the eye just gets to New Orleans, and then on the backside, more strong winds. So we're talking 3 or 4 hours of pretty strong wind, maybe longer.
Yes, and
that the Superdome will have to endure, correct?
And yes, and the center, that number you gave, Miles, was 40 miles to the center of the eye, which is where the calm winds are. It's only 15 miles to the eye wall, because the eye is actually so big right now. So New Orleans only 15 miles from the very strongest winds, and the new 9 o'clock update here says those winds are still 135 miles per hour, and we had some wind gusts across Mississippi and Alabama over 100 already. Here's New Orleans. I will zoom in for you. The center of New Orleans to the center of the storm, 40. But look at the eye wall. Look how close the eye wall is to New Orleans. Less than 15 miles. New Orleans, you're about to get your closest approach. Your closest approach of the eye is going to be about in an hour. You kind of have to do the right angle here. It's kind of all the Pythagorean theorem. As the eye moves right about there, that's as close as the eye is going to get to you, and also as close as the eye wall is going to get to you. So your winds are still going up from here, at least for another hour, hour and a half. And now we have 47 miles to about Bay St. Louis, a little bit farther to the north and to the east there of Pascagoula, the east of, let's say, here, Slidell, and the west of Biloxi. So the bad part of the storm here, that's going to be making its way right into Biloxi. And if you do the math, 15 miles per hour, the worst part of the eye gets there in about 3 hours, but it goes downhill from here. Here's some of the numbers. Pascagoula, Mississippi, the gusts to 118. Gulfport, gusts to 100. And New Orleans Lakefront, a gust to 86 miles per hour. Very concerned that all of this wind blows the water into Lake Bourne and also into Lake Pontchartrain, and then the winds coming from this direction into New Orleans breach that levee that's on Lake Pontchartrain. We've already heard some reports of that happening. Boy, things are going downhill in a hurry out there.
Okay, Chad, I got to ask you a question. What are the options if that roof starts peeling off a little more? They just got to keep those people there, don't they?
I think basically at this point you get into the mezzanine, because if you take a look at the very upper deck of the Superdome, the very upper decks attached to where the Superdome top goes. And so if you're under that deck, you're still going to be pretty safe, because the top, even if it completely blows off, you get into where they sell the hot dogs and the hamburgers. And those bunkers, basically, they're all concrete in that Superdome. It was built to withstand this type of storm. Obviously, the roof not taking it right now. But I think maybe an hour and a half, if we lose more pieces, there'll be no one on the inside where you would watch the game, but everybody on the outside where the bathrooms are. Back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Chad Myers. Appreciate that, and we hope things go well inside the Superdome, that's for sure. Gary Tuckman is in our Hurricane One. That's our mobile unit. He's been making his way from Gulfport, Mississippi, generally in our direction. Don't know how far he's gotten. Gary, where are you? What have you been seeing?
Miles, we're sticking around Gulfport because the damage is so extensive here. It's hard to imagine that this is going to get worse. We are watching these buildings deteriorate and break down before our eyes. Parts of the metal on top of the buildings have been coming down, flying all over the streets. Much of Gulfport, Mississippi, 70 miles east of New Orleans, is now flooded. The downtown street, US 90 along the beach, completely flooded, probably 6 feet of water. I'm going to try to get out for a second and give you an idea of some of the damage we're seeing here. You can see right here, this railroad crossing has gone down 10 minutes ago. This is still up. Buildings across the way are losing their roofing. Windows all over have started breaking. We're being told by authorities that several people have been hurt from broken windows. Boats have washed up on US 90. We've seen at least 3 sailboats in the water. And because the water is so deep on the road, just about 1 mile in this direction, the boats are floating up the street. There is extensive damage. I got to be honest with you, we've had to tell the police about some of it. Fortunately, no one else is out here right now. We're traveling in this vehicle, Miles, that you just mentioned, Hurricane 1, that has an antenna on top of it that's able to move and track the satellite, and that's why we can show you live pictures while we're moving. But there is extensive damage here, and this is basically right now like hell on earth. Miles, back to you.
Gary Tuckman in Gulfport, Mississippi, where he describes it as hell on earth. It sounds like they are really feeling the brunt of it right now. Let's get to Soledad right away. Soledad?
Miles, thanks. We're going to introduce you to Mary Landrieu of Louisiana. She is the senior senator from Louisiana. She's at the Hurricane Command Center in Baton Rouge. Nice to see you, Senator. Thank you for talking with us. I know you've been getting numerous briefings, and I want to run through some of the information that you've been getting. First, the Superdome. You've heard about the situation there. What's the latest that you've heard? And what are they going to do with those folks inside if it looks like that roof is not going to stay on?
Soledad, this is an extremely dangerous storm. The governor has been saying that. The governor of Mississippi trying to evacuate people for days. The mayor of New Orleans issued a mandatory evacuation because this was expected. We were praying for the very best, preparing for the worst. That is why these mandatory evacuations have been in place, urging people to get out of the way of the storm. Obviously, not everyone heeded it. The police now, who are on standby, the sheriffs, the National Guard, cannot go out in this weather. They would be in danger themselves. So people have to batten down the best they can. We understand the roof of the Superdome is deteriorating, but the building structure should hold for the next few hours. It's going to be very terrifying for a lot of people, but the command center is fully aware of what is going on. The problem is, in the middle of a storm, you can't deploy your assets. They are standing by: food, water, ice, electricity. But in some of the 911 buildings in St. Bernard Parish, we know the building itself is gone, the 911 building. The sheriffs, the local officials are putting their lives on the line right now in those communication shelters, trying to do the best they can. So people just have to, do the best they can. This is going to be a couple of hours for those that are left. Most of the city evacuated. Most people listened to what the police and the governor has pleaded over the last 2 days to say. So all I can tell you is we're going to do the best we can here, and as soon as it's safe to get the emergency personnel out to rescue people, they will.
I can't tell if you're pleased with the evacuations or 80% or so took off, and you're talking about a community where you are a native, people have been through a lot of storms, and that often makes them very complacent, or if you're frustrated by the 20% that didn't heed the warnings.
Well, at this time it doesn't matter. What matters is that a lot of people did heed and got out. Some people didn't. And the communications center is aware of that, and they're going to do the best they can to rescue people after the fact. The storm is very serious. It still has not completely hit the areas that we're anticipating, but that is underway now. It's not a matter of being frustrated. It's just the fact this is a very dangerous storm, but the evacuation plan worked for the most part, but people still didn't heed some of the warnings.
Do you think that because there really hasn't been a direct hit for, 40 years or so, that's part of the reason people are complacent? They figure, hey, I went through another storm. I'm not worried about this one. I've lived through other big storms.
I think part of that is, but also, you know, some people couldn't leave because they didn't have transportation, although there was public transportation to a certain extent made available. But the point is that I hope the country will be riveted to see what we've been saying, that this marsh that protects this great Gulf Coast needs to be preserved and invested in so that we minimize the damage caused by these storms. There's nothing you can do to stop them. You can only invest and be prepared. This is a working coast. People are not sunbathing on this coast. They're producing the oil and gas for the nation. They're running all the commercial shipping coming up from the Mississippi River that brings grain out of Kansas. We serve as a drainage of water for the nation. So we are working here on this coast, and we need investments, and hopefully our focus right now today actually is saving lives. That's what our local elected officials are focused on, and we're going to be supporting their efforts.
Building on the coast, too, and some people have said that's one of the big reasons and big concerns that the storm surge, which looks like at least some of it might diminish, might go past you a little more to the east. But that would be the reason the levees could easily overflood, and essentially there were some pretty dire predictions. I know you read them, Senator.
Absolutely, but again, people are living on this coast so that we can ship goods out of the United States, so that we can produce oil and gas for the United States. Yes, there are some, you know, second homes in some resort areas, but this is for all means a working coast. We've been here for over 300 years. We've continued to say, please invest in our levee systems. We've got one of the finest in the country. Hopefully most of it will hold up. Some of it may not. We've said, please, let's invest in our coast. So this will be some pictures and some hopefully unfortunate tragedy that will get the country to recognize an investment up front could save us all not only money but a lot of pain and lives in the long run. Let's just stay focused. The local elected officials are directing this instance, and we're here to help. Again, the governor and the governor of Mississippi had unprecedented cooperation to try to evacuate people ahead of this storm.
Well, Senator, we're going to ask you to come back and chat with us when the storm passes. We'll have an opportunity to figure out what exactly has happened and how effective all the evacuations were. We're keeping our fingers crossed, of course, for everybody down where you are. Thanks for talking to us. That was the Louisiana Senator Mary Landrieu joining us. Miles, let's get back to you.
Soledad, here in Baton Rouge, campus of Louisiana State University. The wind is really whipping up now. Matter of fact, it's beyond those trees, but the aluminum roof to that building over there is starting to peel away. Lots of debris coming down. Amazingly, the lights are still on. I do know one important thing. It appears that the utilities are underground. As Chad Myers maybe not aptly put it, this is the easy side of the storm, meaning left of the eye. Easy is relative when we're talking Category 4 or Category 5. If this is the easy side, the hard side is where Rob Marciano is. He's in Biloxi, Mississippi. Rob, how are things going there?
It's hitting bad right now, Miles. Winds easily gusting to 100 miles an hour. We're kind of in a corner, somewhat protected, but right now flashings of the roof and gutter are being ripped off this hotel and being blown over our heads. Here comes probably the biggest puff we've had yet, right here. That's the biggest puff right there. Look at these trees. Look at these palm trees flailing. And then beyond that, an entire forest where trees are snapping in half. We're trying to get a camera over there, but it's just way too dangerous. We are covered, somewhat protected right now by 3 sides of concrete, but our heads, it's possible for something to come down on our heads. Right now, the winds are blowing this way, easily gusting over 100 miles an hour, so anything that does fly off will blow that way. We've got another camera up on the 3rd floor, facing the southeast, and it's a picture of the sign of our hotel, which is also coming apart, but it hasn't come completely down yet. Also, water is a huge issue. We're seeing rain coming down easily at 2 inches an hour, so the streets are flooding, and on top of that, the roof and the structure, Miles, is beginning to come apart. We talk so often about what damage hurricane force winds can do. But when you get winds over 100 miles an hour, we've already seen that happen. Structures are going to start to be damaged and start to come apart, and we're not even near the center of this thing just yet. So that's the story right now in Biloxi, and we are 6 miles from the coastline. Should also say that we've got word from the National Guard and Gary Tuckman may have already reported on this, that where we were last night, right along the beach, that roadway is covered by 4 feet of water. So the storm surge is coming in as well. Luckily, we're about 20 feet above sea level and well north of that storm surge, so that's not the issue. The issue right now is damaging winds and flying debris. We're just trying to keep the crew safe as things start to come unraveled here, Miles.
Well, all right. Well, I know, Rob, you've thought about it, and I know you have a good escape plan. I know you have a way to get things buttoned up and safe there if need be. It seems as if the developing story here is that after all of our focus on New Orleans, there is a tremendous hit already in Gulfport and Biloxi. Of course, you got to remember that the brunt of the storm hasn't reached New Orleans yet. That's a little bit further away, and that remains to be seen. Of course, we have reports of the dome of the Superdome peeling away a little bit, so there is that to consider as the storm passes through there. Also, Baton Rouge, for those of you unfamiliar with the territory, we're 80 miles, mostly west, a little bit north of New Orleans. And as we say, because of that counterclockwise swirl and the fact that we're 40 feet above sea level, this is a pretty good place to be. Having said that, we've seen Anderson Cooper, who's down by the Mississippi River, which is very close to where I'm standing, but it's an amazing difference in picture. I'm kind of protected here by the stadium and some buildings, and he's out there exposed to the elements. What's going on there now, Anderson?
Yeah, if you want to switch anytime, Miles, I'm more than happy to. It's pretty bad. I mean, it's gotten to the point where I'm facing south right now. Just turning north is very difficult to even stare, but you can see the whitecaps and the amount of swell. I mean, this is the Mississippi River. This looks like, it could be an inland ocean or the sea on a relatively calm day. This is the Mississippi River. A lot of whitecaps we're seeing, and visibility is really down, probably now to about 50 feet. It's gotten progressively worse, even over the last 15 minutes or so. And if you've been staying with us with our coverage, as I hope you have, I showed you that barge and that crane which had sort of cut loose. This is the view of that from the river level. This thing was pointing in the other direction about 2 hours ago. That crane is now just swinging loose, and this barge is basically pushing up against a pedestrian bridge, sort of a pier out over the Mississippi. That's where we were standing a short time ago. But I mean, this thing could just get pushed ashore. We're really not sure what's going to happen here. It's a very strange situation. Just kind of see this barge. It appears to be floating loose. There may be an anchor there somewhere, but this thing has swung around and could become, I mean, if it goes out into the river, if it gets pushed out a little bit further, it could just be swept down. There's a casino boat about, I'm guessing 200, 300 yards down there, which you can probably just make out. If that barge got pushed loose, it could very easily go right into that casino boat. You can't even see it anymore, but a short time ago we saw a cutter, a ship in the middle of the river that's been there for quite some time, and they were trying to move. And if you look right now crossing the bridge, there's a tractor-trailer truck. I mean, that is not a good idea for a tractor-trailer truck to be crossing the bridge across the Mississippi River, across I-10 at the height of the storm. And this is really as bad as it has been for us, and it's not clear how much longer it's going to remain like this. As you know, Miles, we're in this northwest part, so the wind is coming to us from the north, the rain is coming from the north, and I want to show you how much the waters of the Mississippi have already risen at about, I'm not sure what time it is now, but about 3:30 a.m. or 4 a.m. local time. We stood out there at the bottom of that pier, and that big tree trunk, that tree root you see there, that was not covered by water at all. And in fact, I pointed to it and I said, we're going to use that as kind of a marker of how much the water has risen. Well, as you can see, it is now almost completely covered, and the water is about 10 to 15 feet farther ashore than it was before. So the Mississippi River clearly is rising, the water is coming on, and visibility just continues to get worse, and these whitecaps just keep on pounding. It is very hard to get a sense of how the rest of Baton Rouge is doing. We've been, lucky in a sense in that the storm has moved somewhat to the east, so it's not getting as hard hit, but it is certainly getting hit pretty badly, Miles, and I'm sure where you are as well. You also really get a sense of the wind if you turn around. This is sort of a levee that goes up to street level. you can really see the wind just whipping the water. It's sort of this wall of white that we've gotten very used to seeing, the grass being blown down, and that American flag there, which has been flying, which they forgot to take down, I guess, is still up, which is pretty miraculous. We thought that would have been gone a while ago, but it is locked up there. We will see how much longer it can last for, but as you can see by the amount of wind on it, it's starting to tear just a little bit, but it is still going. That is the scene from the Mississippi River. We're probably going to go back up on the pier, but again, I mean, look at this thing. It's just swinging around. The top of this crane is just moving around, and it is completely untethered. Sometimes with cranes, they'll do that so that so the wind will take it, and so the crane itself doesn't crash or doesn't break in half. But that thing is it's hitting the pier. It is certainly not a good scene here, but let's hope it does not go out any farther into the river. And I might be mistaken, but it looks like there's actually some sort of barge in the middle of the Mississippi. I don't know if that's on the move or if that's tethered, but let's hope it is not trying to get down this river at this height of the storm, Miles.
All right, Anderson Cooper, thank you very much. In Baton Rouge, what a difference a mile or so can make. We're here on the campus of Louisiana State University, right near where he is. I'm protected, and it's a whole different story. Take a look at this shot. This is Biloxi, Mississippi, where we've been talking to Rob Marciano, and this is the awning of his hotel there. He's been describing a lot of damage to buildings there, and you can see that awning is just about to give way. We'll check back with Rob in just a little bit. He's been telling us a little bit about how he's been covering it while staying safe as well. Now, you've got 30,000 plus students here at Louisiana State University, and they're getting a few days off from classes, at least. Heather Joe and Jacob Russell join me now, both seniors. Did your parents want you to come home, first of all?
They did, and then we told them that traffic was just too bad and we couldn't come, or else it would be more dangerous because of the rain on the road and the darkness last night. You're
both from Shreveport. What is the situation with your parents? Did they want you home?
Absolutely not.
And I understand they became they've opened up their doors to a lot of people who've been evacuated. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we got some family from New Orleans that are crashing with them, but they told me it would be a fun storm, so just to sit in Baton Rouge, ride it out, and watch the show.
Well, I don't know if fun is the appropriate thing to say. Watching this right now, you might draw that conclusion, but it's a very dangerous storm as well. Have you gotten to the point where you're at all concerned? Do you feel like you did the right thing staying here?
I think I'm pretty safe here. If I was in New Orleans, I'd be really afraid. But, CNN hasn't said to leave Baton Rouge or the mayor. I don't know. But plus, we're in a safe apartment complex. Well, it seems safe. So until we're told otherwise, we're just going to stay there.
All right, good words. Heather Joe and Jacob Russell, seniors here at LSU. Getting a little bit of a taste of a hurricane of Category 4 strength. We'll be back with more of our coverage in just a moment. Stay with us.
Keep watching CNN, your hurricane headquarters.
Mark Morial is the president of the National Urban League, but he's also the former mayor of New Orleans, and he joins us to talk a little bit about what you've been seeing. Good morning to you. Thanks for coming in to talk to us. I was watching you, and you've been listening to the coverage, and you've been watching the pictures. I mean,
it's devastating.
This is home for you.
This is home, and this is the storm that everyone sort of has feared, really, for 40 years since Hurricane Betsy, and so much of the preparation in building better levees, new drainage systems, disaster preparedness plans has been about preparation for a storm like Katrina.
And still, a lot of the predictions were quite dire, because the truth is the levees are not built for Category 5 storm, which Katrina was for a little bit. Now it's a strong 4, hitting direct impact.
The good thing now is that there's computer modeling available that gives local and state officials and emergency management personnel a chance to really look at the flooding effect, the storm surge effect, the wind effect, and I think that the state, city, and federal officials should be commended for strongly encouraging this mandatory evacuation. And also, I give great credit to the people who responded very quickly to leave the community. You have great concern, as I have great concern, for the people who could not leave. Many of the people who are in the Superdome simply did not have the wherewithal to leave. Certainly there are some who probably could have, but there are people without transportation, there are people without anywhere to go, and I'm somewhat shocked that the roof of the dome appears to have been breached.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. We've got John Zarella, who apparently is on the streets now in New Orleans, and I want to chat with him about what he's seeing. John, thanks for being with us. He's joining us by phone. What are you seeing, John?
A wild one.
Hey, John Zarella, can you hear me? This is Soledad in New York. Give us a sense of where you are and what you see.
I can barely hear you, but I'll tell you what I can see right now. We're standing on Common Street, and the wind is just whipping down the street. The water is pouring down the street like waves on the top of the ocean, just blowing down the street. There are windows blown out in the building across the street. There are canopies that are down. Up through the manhole covers, the water is just pouring out through the manhole covers. It just can't take it. Again, New Orleans is below sea level to begin with, and what we have seen throughout the last 4 or 5 hours is just constant pounding rain. The water is just pouring down the sides of these giant skyscrapers here as if someone just took buckets and dumped it off the sides of the buildings. Again, the worst of it appears right now to be the water that we're seeing. It has not reached the sandbags that surround the doors of the hotels and the businesses here on Common Street, just a couple of blocks off Canal Street. Has not gotten that high yet. But again, we still have not seen the worst of the storm. And the wind is just whipping through the streets. You can look down the street, and at times, Soledad, you can barely see anything from the pure whiteout conditions that exist here in downtown New Orleans. Soledad.
Hey, John, thanks. Let me ask you to stand by while we talk to Mark Morial again. A little bit earlier, we heard from Adore Udoji, who said it's not even howling. The wind is screaming.
Yeah, it's a fearful sound when that wind is whipping and you hear things battering. You hear shutters and awnings and
but
things
you've heard
falling.
John's description. New Orleans is below sea level. It cannot take all this rain.
No.
Flooding's going to be a big problem. The wind's going to be a big problem.
And John's downtown, where probably it's a little bit higher. I certainly would wonder what the effect of the water is in some of the residential neighborhoods, and certainly it's a lot more severe. We've just got to wait this out. People have to wait this out. And I think I saw Senator Landrieu on, and I think she made a point that I would make, and that is certainly the people of the nation, Louisiana will need the people of the nation to assist in the recovery efforts and in the rebuilding efforts that are going to take place. But we also want people to understand how important the economy of southeastern Louisiana is to the nation.
What's your guess on the devastation here? I mean, it hasn't hit yet, and you've heard John's description.
I think you're going to have, it seems like, significant property damage, certainly a loss of power. The big if is how significant is the flooding throughout the community and what effect will that have on property. But certainly at the top is, has anyone been affected? Has anyone's safety, has anyone's life been affected? And certainly no one knows at this time.
The winds are going to pick up because, again, you're not in the eye of the storm yet, and he's talking about windows being blown out of buildings and from what he can see in the middle of the street.
And you'll probably have roofs blown off homes. You'll probably have down trees. Those trees may hit buildings. Certainly they're going to knock down a whole lot of wires, so there's going to be a loss of electricity, probably television, probably telephone service.
How do you pay for the cleanup?
Well, the cleanup,
it's
a huge bill, but a good part of it is going to have to be borne certainly by the federal government. I know that the state and the city will do their part, but the federal government has an important responsibility and a fund that can be utilized. It's important, I think, as I sit here in New York as a person who loves New Orleans and loves southeastern Louisiana, that the rebuilding effort is important not only for the people who live in southeastern Louisiana, but for the economy of the nation. Louisiana and Mississippi's economies are closely tied. Oil and gas, certainly tourism, port and shipping, the railroad industry, goods that go abroad, international trade are going to be affected. They're going to be interrupted. They're going to be slowed down by the effect of this storm.
Let's get back to John Zarella for just a moment. Hey, John, you heard these reports about the Superdome, and as it was described to us by an affiliate reporter, a 1/12 of the total circumference of that dome ripped off is what he was describing. Rain coming in. You could see daylight. Any surprises? A picture of the Superdome not too long ago. Any surprise to you when you consider that you're out in the elements, that's going on for the folks who've sort of hunkered down at the Superdome?
No surprise at all out here from what we're seeing. It's like if I step out, I don't even know that you'll be able to hear me as I walk down the street on Common Street, huddled against the side of a massive building here. But the water just continues to rise. I guess what surprises me, and then again it doesn't, is that we are surrounded by so many tall, big concrete block structures here in the downtown area, in the French Quarter area, that we're not feeling the absolute full brunt of the wind that's howling. But as I look down the street, the water is up and continuing to rise and just being whipped off the top of the street now. It's just racing down the street. It's probably no more than about a foot deep in places here. It's continuing to rise, and you can hear that wind howling as I stand on the street corner. Again, it's like whiteout condition right now. It's got very gray, very, very black for a minute. One of the squall lines going through. The cars, the water is up close to the wheel well on the curbside of most of these cars. Now we're hearing some more debris beginning to slam down on the ground here. But the big thing, Soledad, again, that I see here so much more than, at least at this point, the wind, is this water, this rising water. It's just being blown and whipped around by the wind because of the fact that we are so shielded from the straight line winds that you might get if you, and it certainly would get if you were in a more exposed area. It's bad enough here as it is on the street as I walk along, but it would be so much worse. And as I've been talking to you just in the last few minutes, the water is continuing to come up. Still hasn't reached the sandbags that are surrounding the hotels and the businesses here, but it's getting mighty close. Soledad?
We still have a little ways to go. That's fair to say. John Zarella is walking down the street, kind of giving us a bird's eye view of what's going on.
John's got courage.
Yeah, John's covered a lot of these, and he's a very brave guy. Braver than most of us would ever be. Let's talk about the Superdome, because he's talking about the problems about flooding, and we've seen 1 million people evacuated out of New Orleans. If there are massive flooding problems, and if there are wind damage problems, where are you going to put all these people? Even if it's a third of the people.
Will not be able to return for quite some time. They will, and it won't be advisable for them to return until after there's been some sort of damage assessment, a recovery effort to ensure that downed power lines. A lot of the loss of life, if I recall Hurricane Betsy, occurred in the aftermath of the storm, when people went outside and when buildings which were not solid and had been affected by the storm fell down and power lines affected people.
What
it's really going to require.
I mean, you've got a building. If you're in there and you're one of the 10,000 people and the roof is starting to peel off,
that Superdome
where do you go?
Is supposed to be stronger than the Roman Colosseum.
Right, that's supposed to last.
It's surprising that the roof would be breached, but that certainly shows you how significant this storm is. And inside the dome, there are huge ballrooms. There are areas outside of sort of the football playing field area that people are probably going to have to be transferred to. And if they're in those areas, I think they will be safe as long as there's not a significant breach or compromise of the roof of the dome. But it's a surprising development that certainly is going to require close monitoring.
Yeah, a bad surprise, certainly. And for those folks who thought that they were hunkering down in a very safe location,
yes,
they're getting some bad news this morning and getting probably wet.
Yeah, and
I
think people we have to continue to pray that there's no loss of life, and certainly I think the rest of the country has to recognize with the power of this storm, it's going to come inland. and in fact will dump rain and certainly high winds on other parts of the interior of the United States.
Right.
So Louisiana is just...
We haven't even started yet, really. I mean, the eye is not there, and we're already looking at the damage. All right,
12
Mark,
hours
I'm going to ask you to stick around if we
Okay,
can. We're going to keep you right in this chair.
Good.
I want to get right to Chad. We got some breaking news about this storm. Hey, Chad, good morning again.
Hey, good morning. I want you to keep the mayor there as well. Tornado warning for Jefferson Parish, including Kenner and Metairie, also Orleans Parish, including the city of New Orleans. Now, the National Weather Service at 8:32 indicating many reports are coming in stating total structural failure in the New Orleans metro area. Seeks substantial cover now. Winds are gusting to over 120 miles per hour. Here is the storm. What we have now is New Orleans on the easy side. Can you believe that? 120 on this side, 140 on this side. Total structural failure, and I'm wondering how long these levees are going to hold on Lake Pontchartrain. Rob Marciano's up in Biloxi. Rob, you've got structural failure in some spots too.
Oh, in a big way, Chad. Easily winds now, sustained 80, 90 miles an hour, gusts to 110, 120. Look at this. The undercarriage of this awning, it's being torn apart. Light fixtures, light bulbs blowing up and flying everywhere. We're protected somewhat by 3 sides of stucco and concrete, but this structure is coming apart as we speak. Look at all the debris down here. This is not only from the awning, but also flashings from pieces of the roof and the gutter, all littering now this area, damaging cars that are parked, and beyond that, the trees that we keep showing you look like they keep disappearing by the minute. Certainly be. Look at that debris, look at that. The entire thing is coming apart. Heads up, guys. This is a good spot. All right. Now the framework of that is wood, so I wouldn't suspect the entire thing would fly away, like say an aluminum overhang of a gas station. But until every piece of that white vinyl is torn off, it's pretty nasty. Nice job, Mike. I got you. Word out of Biloxi. The police are not coming out. They're down. They're hunkered down. They are not going out to any calls. We've got reports of boats now that are floating down Highway 90 about 6 miles to our south and to our east. And this piece of structure continues to come unraveled. Chad, are you there? Who am I tossing back to? Miles, Chad, what are the observations you're getting out of Mississippi right now? These winds easily 110, maybe even 120, the way this hotel is coming apart.
You know, all we have right now from Biloxi is about 94 miles per hour, and 94 obviously still big enough to make damage anywhere there, Rob.
That's a gust at 94?
That was a gust to 94 right there, yes.
Okay, it seems like, we're getting, I don't want to say calming down, but you know how these come in surges. Every time you get a band, you get a bit of a winds from the upper levels coming down, and it's calming down just a little bit. Anyway, that's the latest from Biloxi. This hotel coming apart at the seams a little bit. A quick shot, if we could, of the camera on the southeast side. I don't even know what that looks like anymore. I can't even peek around. That's probably the most dangerous side of this hotel right now, the most exposed part, where that sign, I don't know how the Comfort Inn sign is holding apart the way, nailed down pieces of this hotel seem to be peeling off.
Hey, Rob.
That's it. Yo.
Rob, you've got another band here that's to your southeast that's even worse than the one you just went through. Make sure the crew is ready for that. Make sure you're ready for that. You just went through one of the outer bands. Actually part of the northern eye wall is still to your southwest. There's Biloxi. Here's the easy part he just talked about. That could be 130 to 140 miles per hour, and that's not that far away. That's less than a half hour away, bud.
Will we get a break? Will we get into the bit of calm in the eye, or are we going to stay on the right side of that eye wall and just get hammered for the next 3 hours?
The farther you move to the east, 10 miles to the east, you're in the eye wall the whole time. You may actually see the sunshine. You will be in the eye.
Oh, that'd be nice, but it sounds like it's going to be a rough ride until then. All right, Chad, thanks for keeping me up to date. We're going to head inside for a bit.
Miles?
All right, thank you very much, guys. I was sort of mesmerized by that conversation, hearing that discussion about those wind speeds. The winds picked up here in Baton Rouge quite a bit. We've got this storm covered all the way across the Gulf Coast. CNN is your headquarters for hurricanes. Our show continues in just a moment. Stay with us.
Killer Hurricane Katrina bears down on New Orleans. The latest on Larry King, 9 Eastern. Keep watching CNN, your hurricane headquarters.
Welcome back. I'm Miles O'Brien, live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, about 80 miles west of New Orleans. I'm told by Chad Myers in the Weather Center, he just reported to us that the worst of the storm has now reached New Orleans. This is the moment we've been talking about, dreading, anticipating now for some days. Jean Meserve is right in the thick of it. She's not too far from the Superdome. I don't know how well she can hear me. Jean, give us the latest.
Miles, we went over to try to take a look at the Superdome because we've heard these reports that they were having problems over there. From our vantage point, we can hardly see the Superdome, and we're about a half a block away. Whiteout conditions here, incredible rain, punishing winds. We heard on the radio that they might be trying to move some people out of the Superdome. I don't see how they could possibly do it in these conditions. We could barely put an eye around the corner of the building to take a peek at what was happening over there. I know there's been talk about the roof. Is there a problem with the roof? From the standing and with this kind of condition, we can't possibly see whether there is or not. I've got some skyscrapers off to my right here, and we are just watching them fall apart. The hotel is right there. There's a corner of windows, and that corner, oh boy, every time we look up, there's another couple gone, debris flying past us. It's draperies, it's Venetian blinds, it's papers, it's bedding. Really incredible scene here. The flooding on the street has gotten considerably worse. It's to a couple of feet now at least. There's a storm drain down there that I've been watching. A while ago, I could see that water was starting to bubble up back through it, and we weren't just looking at water. There was an oil slick there, sort of symptomatic of the kind of problems they believe they're going to have after this is all over with all the runoff that's going to be accumulated on the streets here. Miles?
Jean Meserve, I hope you can hear me. If you can, you talked about the flooding. How you have a sense from where you sit as to how extensive the flooding is?
How intense the flooding is. We're a little reluctant to move the camera because we're afraid I'll lose our signal. I'm going to step out of the shot for a minute. Go take a look. You can look at what's happening behind me. Let's run over and take a look. It's come up. I would say there's maybe, in the worst place, maybe 2 feet of water on the ground down there. A lot of debris in it now because of all the stuff that's come out of all these buildings. This does look like rain accumulation and like backflow from the sewers. This doesn't look like we've had any breach of the levees apparent in this part of the town, at least at this point in time.
All right. Jean Meserve, thanks, and apologies to our viewers. Obviously difficult getting that signal in with the worst of the storm bearing down on New Orleans. Something that we have been talking about and dreading, as we say, for quite some time. Let's hope the city fares well, Soledad.
All right, Miles, let's check back in with the former mayor of New Orleans, Mark Morial, who's been listening to our coverage as well. And I see your face when you've been hearing some of these things. For example, when Jean Meserve talks about the bedding, the windows blowing out, and of course everything in the room blowing out as well, you seem very, very concerned.
That shows there's a lot of catastrophe, and there's going to be a massive cleanup effort. And Jean and John are both downtown, which is going to be affected, but you've got tall, strong buildings. I certainly wonder what's happening out in the neighborhoods where there are homes and houses, undoubtedly trees down, and how those structures much less protected.
How about the folks in the Superdome? You heard Jean talk about, and she actually went out in the street to try to see what was going on at the Superdome, said she was half a block away, couldn't even make it out from half a block away, can't see it.
A lot depends on how significant the breach in the roof is. The dome, as I mentioned, people can go into the quadrant areas, into the ballroom areas to get out of the bowl of the dome and perhaps get away from the weather. But
more risky, though, to take 10,000 people and march them someplace else?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think to move people in the middle of a storm, it's only my opinion, would not be advisable unless it was absolutely necessary, because you would need buses and people to drive buses and that would not be advisable. So they're in a very tough situation. We need to certainly pray for them and hope that they're going to be able to ride this out for the next 12 hours or so.
You heard Chad say that at 8:32 there were reports of total structural failure. That's just complete building collapse.
Yes.
I assume residences and some commercial buildings as well.
A lot depends on where that is. There is New Orleans, but then there are a lot of coastal areas in Houma, Terrebonne, Lafourche, Plaquemines Parish, which are south of the city, which are literally surrounded by marsh and swamp and bayous, and they're going to be dramatically affected. The city is a bit more secure because of the levee system. But a storm surge from Lake Pontchartrain, which sits on the north side of the city, compounded with heavy rain, could create flooding throughout. So I think we've got to all wait and see and certainly hope for the best. The good thing is that my sense is that there's no news as of yet of any loss of life. That's good news. I certainly hope that continues throughout.
Yeah, I know that there was one official who was quoted as saying, listen, certainly about the Superdome, this is not about creature comforts. This is about making sure everybody's alive on Tuesday.
Right.
We just want to get people through this storm.
That dome is probably crowded, and I know there's a lot of people there and a lot of children there, and certainly their patience is going to be tested, but that shelter of last resort is essential.
Yeah, it's never a good sign, though, when the shelter of last resort looks like it's falling apart a little bit, but we'll try to get over there and see exactly what's happening there. Mark Morial, we're going to ask you to stick around.
Okay,
Don't even say goodbye to me yet, because we're not letting you go. We're going to take a short break. We continue to be your hurricane headquarters as we follow the path of Katrina, a devastating Category 4 storm hitting right now. Stay with us. We're back in a moment.
A sense, well, I'm blind here. Live pictures now, Biloxi, Mississippi, where it's been a rough ride so far. Rob Marciano and his team are there, and he was talking back and forth with Chad Myers just a segment ago, and I hope you caught it. It was kind of it was rather mesmerizing listening to them talk about these wind speeds that they were able to isolate in those little areas. Chad, I got to ask you a question. How are you able to know what the wind speed is where Rob is right there? Is that just kind of a computer sort of guessing, interpolating, if you will?
Kind of, but the Doppler radar is actually able to show us which wind direction the raindrop is moving. Think about when you're sitting at a train track waiting for a train to go by. When the horn blows, the horn is a different pitch on the way to you compared to when the train goes by you. That difference in pitch is called the Doppler effect. And by looking at the Doppler, we can actually see which way the raindrops are flying in the storm. Now, granted, by the time we run from Slidell back over to Biloxi, that beam is maybe 1,000 feet in the air, but we still have a real good idea how strong these winds are all across the area, and that's how the Hurricane Center keeps up on the wind. They don't have to fly a plane in all the time, especially when it's over land, because you do have the Doppler capability. The western eye wall of the hurricane directly over eastern New Orleans right now, Slidell being slammed. There are so many other towns right now that are being hit so hard that we can't focus on, because obviously New Orleans is a major focus. But right along I-12 and I-10, right over to Bay St. Louis, and then another band that's about to slap Biloxi here with winds over 120 miles per hour. The big red area here that's still offshore will be onshore in less than a half hour. It gets worse from here, Biloxi, not better. Back to you.
Hey, Chad, what's your best guess on when it will be its worst here in Baton Rouge? Do you have a sense of it?
Well, you know what, Miles, every time a band goes by, you get bad weather, and then there's a miss in the band right here. All your weather's coming in from the east. And there are bands still to your east, but then there's a break through here. You've got some bad weather now, then a break, and then another band of bad weather, but that's still about 45 minutes away. The farther this storm moves away from you, the less chance it has for those bands to get to you. And obviously those bands, they get to Biloxi, they get to Mobile, they get to Meridian, and they start to slide off to the east. That's why this slapping off to the east as every band comes up is much more dangerous than the slapping on the backside, because this here is a slower wrapping, a slower rotation than off to the east. Back to you.
Really great work keeping us informed on this all throughout this special edition of American Morning. And Soledad, that pretty much wraps it up for us. And I just, on a personal note, I have a 12-year-old boy watching right now, my son, who is rather worried that I'd be here. Everything's okay, Murrah. I'm here. We're safe. We did the story, and be home in a few days. Soledad.
Hey, we're worried about you too. In fact, we're worried about all our correspondents who are out there today as we watch a lot of the debris flying by. So yes, to all of you, including you, Miles, please be careful, stay safe. The former mayor of New Orleans, Mark Morial, big thank you to you. We certainly appreciate your time this morning. And obviously, as we hand off our coverage to Darren Kagan, who's at the CNN Center this morning, she's going to take you through the next couple of hours on CNN Live today. The story's only just beginning, Darren. It is a mess, and it's going